Welcome everyone to Module 4 of the Introduction to AI Tools for Teaching and Learning. Let's get started with some of our goals for today's lesson. Today, our goals are to focus on the value and application of generative AI tools for educators and for learners in various instructional contexts. This will include a review of potential appropriate uses for generative AI tools by students in a traditional classroom setting, as well as the potential uses you might find for performing research, university service, and other professional tasks. Then we will go into the strategies that you can use to develop your own generative AI use policies that govern the appropriate use of AI tools by your students. This will include a review of some of the resources that you can use to get inspired, from other policy language resources to individual classroom policies that other instructors have shared with the wider community. By the end of this lesson, I hope you have some ideas as to how you can craft, develop, and communicate those policies and how to enforce them appropriately. So let's jump in. In a traditional classroom environment, there are many ways that educators can use generative AI to enhance our work. When leveraged properly, Gen AI can help us to do things like streamlining pieces of our research and our lesson preparation processes. For example, there are already a few tools that specifically support research functions like Perplexity, Elicit, and ResearchRabbit. These tools will return summaries of current research with their sources cited, allowing you to verify what AI presents. Elicit, specifically, works by searching research paper abstracts, which can help provide a brief synopsis of the research, including simplified information on sample populations and methodology. ResearchRabbit, on the other hand, allows you to search for papers and build collections of papers. It also allows you to collaborate with others by adding comments to those collections or explore emerging themes from your collections. You might also consider using something like ChatGPT or Claude to fine-tune a research question that you have already written to see if there's a way to simplify or more clearly express it. Again, never rely wholly on what AI produces. You should never expect AI to generate a completed literature review for you, but AI might help you find current research or even to get a feel for the potential research directions based on the patterns that AI detects in the literature. Just be wary of over-reliance on these tools or the results they produce to avoid skill atrophy. Another reason to be cautious of over-reliance on these tools is that they are quickly changing and many are now charging for access to their services. This might be a barrier for you, or if you share these tools with your students, it might become a financial barrier for them as well. Again, we want to use these tools to enhance our work, and we shouldn't depend on these to do our work for us. Whether you are formally conducting research because you work in higher education, or maybe you're just updating your curriculum and lesson plans based on the most current information in the field, either way, Gen AI can help you to identify trends and emerging evidence in ways that might surprise you. Another way you might consider using generative AI tools is in the course design process. There is an optional webinar on designing aligned instruction that is linked in the additional resources for this module, so I won't repeat that information here entirely, but in summary, you can use generative AI tools like the Course Mapper tool that is also included in the resources to streamline your brainstorming processes for creating measurable learning outcomes, aligned assessments, and inclusive learning activities. You can also generate images that liven up your presentation slides or create clever mnemonic songs that help students to remember tricky concepts. Again, this is an enhancement of the work that we do, not a replacement. Speaking of which, it's always ideal to consult with a knowledgeable instructional designer on course design decisions. But having one more resource in the form of generative AI can really help. Another way you might consider using Gen AI is when preparing communication or feedback for your students. For example, you can use tools like Claude or Grammarly to evaluate and suggest revisions that can help improve the tone of your written emails or other communications. Do keep in mind that your organization hopefully has many folks that are now able to intuitively detect generative AI in your writing. And if they spot your use of AI, it might offend your recipients because they don't feel like you took the time to craft your own email and so on. However, if you find it challenging to write emails that strike the right tone, you might consider running an email that you've prepared through ChatGPT or Claude to update the tone to be friendlier or more collaborative. Again, the emphasis is for you to use these tools to enhance and not do your work for you. This can also work well for preparing feedback templates for students. If you consistently find yourself giving the same feedback over and over again, consider running it through a text generator and solicit ideas for how to make the feedback more actionable or effective, or even how to make it kinder or more inclusive. One more example in this vein is that you can summarize notes really well with generative AI tools. For example, if you've been taking notes on student performance every week, you can code the names for privacy and then enter it into something like Claude or ChatGPT and have it summarize each student's performance at the midpoint or end of each semester. Just remember to always remove personally identifying information before inputting it into these tools. Another use for an AI text generator is to use it to summarize missed events with meeting minutes. This can be a lifesaver if you have to catch up on a lot of meeting minutes when joining a new committee, for instance. Just be cautious about what the generative AI says is happening. A lot can be missed. However, if the alternative is not reading the preceding 6 months worth of meeting minutes, then AI might be put to good use in this circumstance. In this case, you should always verify that the summary is accurate. Again, this is an enhancement of what you might have otherwise done, not a replacement for the discerning human eye. Another use case might be if you just want to be kept abreast of changes from multiple committees. This might be a reasonable way to do just that. Use your best judgment. There are so many other legitimate uses for generative AI tools for educators. We'll explore ongoing resources in the next module, but one more topic I want to mention is how powerful these tools can be for managing projects. One example is Goblin.tools, and this is linked in the module, which is a fantastic example of a currently free generative AI tool that allows you to break down projects into bite-sized pieces, assigning dates and deliverables with each item. You can do similar things with any text generator. You just have to do some clever prompt engineering. Similarly, consider using these tools to assess risks and threats to your project plans. Having that proverbial second set of eyes can really save you time and heartache. You will find other uses for Gen AI tools the more you experiment with them. But we have to consider the legitimate uses of generative AI tools for ourselves professionally when we consider the policies that we want to develop. There are legitimate use cases of AI for ourselves in our educator roles, and there are plenty for our learners as well. As we consider the legitimate use cases, we also have to consider the risks that Gen AI tools pose to our students in order to effectively craft our policies. So let's start by reviewing some of those legitimate uses. First, remember that AI can be used in the classroom in front of students to demonstrate ideas and concepts from writing voice to critical thinking exercises. I've used something like ChatGPT, usually I use Claude, to do things in front of the class like summarize a table. This was an excellent exercise because the AI missed some key points, and that helped me to demonstrate AI limitations to my students. This is a great way to supervise their experience with these tools. In the same way, your students might benefit from the opportunity to participate in individualized question and answer sessions with these tools. I can tell you that I've engaged with AI tools this way to help me better understand new concepts. Why should we prevent our learners from doing the same? As we discussed on the previous slide, there are many generative AI tools aimed at supporting research functions, and these same tools can be used by your students to find reliable sources and citations for their own research papers. This can be a viable method for finding related articles and authors and for identifying emerging trends. Another use for generative AI in the classroom is by encouraging students to seek early feedback by using tools like Grammarly or Turnitin Draft Coach if your institution has licenses for these tools. These AI tools will check for spelling, grammar, tone, and clarity, or even that the citations are formatted correctly. These tools and others like them can allow students to gain the benefit of early, detailed feedback on their writing. But as anyone who has ever used Grammarly knows, these tools are not 100% accurate. Preparing them for that reality is key, and as a general rule, students must be aware of these limitations and sometimes even the dangers of AI. We talked earlier about the danger of misinformation and incomplete information, and the amplification of racial and other biases, and other challenges associated with AI. Another one of those dangers is related to the data they share with the AI tool. For example, students might not realize that everything they put into ChatGPT and other tools like it is logged. If they are entering in private information, such as a medical diagnosis, they're sharing that information with the company. Or if they're a creative writer and they enter in their writing, they may be unwittingly training the tool to write in their style. There may even be concerns, particularly in K-12 settings, related to the terms of use. Often, generative AI tools will limit the ability of users under the age of 18 to engage with their products. It may be that you simply cannot condone the use of generative AI tools at all in your classroom, given your learner audience, your subject matter, and more. As I mentioned, another huge danger is over-reliance on this technology, which can reduce our students' ability to critically think and problem solve, and presents a problem in and of itself, but it's also an issue when their access to this technology is interrupted. These tools will not be free forever. There may even be some of the tools that I've mentioned in this recording that are no longer free as of the time you see this recording. There is another danger with chatbots designed to mimic natural language. Because they are designed to sound real and to sound authoritative, there is a danger inherent in humans finding meaning where there is none. In the 2021 article by Bender et al. On the danger of stochastic parrots, these dangers are critically examined, which you will read as part of the required resources for this module. Keep these items in mind when designing your policy. There are benefits to this technology, but the dangers are real. And of course, another one of those dangers is the ease of committing plagiarism. So students should be alerted to those consequences and how to avoid plagiarism through a specific classroom AI policy. So now that we've covered some of the ways we can apply generative AI as both educators and as learners, how do we develop individualized policies that govern the use of generative AI? First, we must determine the scope of our policies. This will be determined by our student audience, our subject matter, and what resources we have at our disposal. Also, what are our institutional policies and procedures? Are your individualized classroom policies aligned with your institutional policies? Ensuring alignment will strengthen any classroom policy you enact, as there will be supporting infrastructure in place. It's worth stepping back and examining those organizational policies so you can make sure what you are proposing is feasible. Even if there are no organizational generative AI policies in place yet, examining the pre-existing academic integrity policy, for example, may provide a lot of the information you need when crafting an AI-specific policy. One important piece to keep coming back to when crafting your policy is to remind yourself of the goal of your policy. You want to use this document to ultimately mitigate the risks of generative AI use, to define what makes for appropriate and inappropriate use of the tools, and to consider the needs of your current and future learners. This will likely end up being a living document that you can add to and revise as new tools and capabilities emerge, and as your subject matter changes as well. This is another value of having an individualized generative AI policy for your learners, as opposed to relying on just an organizational policy. Your individual policy is easier to update and adapt as the technology and industry standards evolve. So how do we start the process of writing individual generative AI policies for our learners? First, we look at what others are doing. Reviewing other AI-related policies can help guide your own policy writing. In this module, you'll find examples of both university-level AI policies as well as individual classroom policies, and both these kinds of examples can serve as inspiration for your own policy writing. Your policies may be simple or more complex, but either way, a pre-existing plagiarism policy will not always cover everything related to generative AI use. So here are a few items you should consider, including in your own generative AI use policy. Make sure to include clear, explicit instructions on the appropriate use of generative AI tools with examples if you can. Similarly, you should also include clear instructions on the inappropriate use of AI with examples. This can help illustrate acceptable use scenarios so that your learners are aware of the difference between what's permissible and what is not permissible. Another item to include in a classroom AI policy is if and how generative AI tools should be cited when used. Examples are incredibly helpful here as well. It's also valuable to be clear about the potential consequences for the inappropriate use of AI. This portion may refer back to the university or departmental academic integrity policies, or it may refer to an informal warning process. But whatever that process is, it's important to share the seriousness of the consequences for violating the policy. A final element to work on is your action plan. This may not be something that you share with your learners as part of your AI policy, but it's something that you'll want to develop for your own use. This action plan will detail what steps you intend to follow if and when the inappropriate use of generative AI is detected. For example, my action plan is not necessarily shared with my learners explicitly, but I can tell you that my action plan includes reviewing the submission thoroughly, preparing feedback, and then reaching out to my learners if I have concerns or questions. Another reason to prepare this action plan is to give yourself the opportunity to think out how your policies will actually perform. You must know the steps you plan to take when inappropriate AI use is detected so that you can have a better idea as to how enforceable your policies actually are. One final note is that it's important to collaborate with your peers as much as possible. This might look like participating in governance opportunities like Academic Senate and other committees to collaboratively guide institutional and/or department-level policymaking. Or it might look like collaborating with your peers to ensure your policies are supportive of one another. You may also wish to consult with the instructional design team or learning developers at your institution, as their cross-departmental experience can be incredibly valuable. Our learners ultimately benefit from our collaboration, so do what you can to make space for these kinds of conversations to occur. One of the readings for this module is about the practice of collaborative policy development, where you actually consider including your learners in the policy development process, so that might be a viable option for you to consider as well. It all depends on you, your teaching philosophy, your learners, and your subject matter. So now that we've talked about crafting classroom AI use policies, your task is to practice creating those policies. In the lesson content below this video, you will find several resources, including other institutional and classroom level AI use policies that will help you formulate your own ideas. After you review those resources, you will complete a quiz to check your knowledge, and then you will get some more practice by using AI to generate drafts of a classroom AI use policy. Try using those prompt engineering skills, and remember, you do not need to use this draft in your actual courses. The goal here is to help you to brainstorm the elements you want to include when it comes to your actual classroom policies. As a part of this practice, you will also reflect on the process as well as any strategies you find yourself using that help you along the way. This work will help prepare you to craft actionable AI use policies that you can share with your students and colleagues. Remember, as these tools change and develop, your policies will likely change and develop as well. And don't forget, support is available should you need it. Now go create.